Imagine walking alone on a deserted street late at night and something just doesn't feel right. The night is still, the only sounds are the echo of your footsteps against the cold, concrete pavement. The streetlights flicker in the distance, casting long, ominous shadows that dance and sway with every gust of wind. The air is thick with an unexplainable tension, a chilling foreboding that seeps into your bones. You quicken your pace, pulling your coat tight around you, as if the thin fabric could shield you from the palpable fear. The silence is deafening, yet you can't shake off the feeling that you're not alone. The sensation of unseen eyes watching your every move, the nagging thought that you are the prey in some twisted game. You try to brush it off, telling yourself it's just your imagination playing tricks on you. As I turned the corner, I heard a whisper, a voice calling my name. I stopped dead in my tracks. The whisper was clear, but there was no one in sight. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. It was as if the world held its breath, waiting for the next whisper, the next hint of our unseen adversary. Suddenly, the whispering voice was back. It was soft, almost gentle, yet it echoed around me like a chilling wind. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. A sense of dread enveloped me, as if a cold hand had reached out and gripped my heart, but there was no one there. No one to rationalize away as a trick of the light or a figment of my imagination. Just the voice, a spectral presence that seemed to know me, to understand me. The air grew colder and inexplicable occurrences began to unfold. Shadows shifted, unanchored by any physical form. The room's temperature dropped significantly, a stark contrast to the warm summer night outside. The whispering voice grew louder, more insistent. It was an unsettling symphony of sound, a cacophony of whispers that seemed to dance around me, taunting me, teasing me. My heart pounded in my chest as if trying to escape. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I was trapped in my own fear, my own uncertainty. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, an unending echo in the cold, empty room. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape, but where could I go? The whispering voice was everywhere, a constant, invisible pursuer. I was a prisoner in my own home, my own mind. The fear was palpable, a tangible entity that seemed to grow with every passing second. And then, suddenly, silence. The whispering ceased, leaving me alone with my pounding heart and shallow breaths. I stood there, frozen in place, waiting for the next whisper, the next chill running down my spine. But it never came. Instead, something far more terrifying happened. Suddenly I felt a cold hand on my shoulder and I froze in terror. In that moment, memories flooded back, memories of an old friend long gone. A chill ran down my spine as I recalled the face of my childhood companion, a face that time had cruelly taken away. We were as thick as thieves, inseparable and always up to some mischief or the other. His laughter, the way his eyes twinkled with mischief, and that voice, oh that voice, was the soundtrack of my youth. But as they say, fate is a cruel mistress. One day he was there, and the next he was gone. His sudden departure left a void in my life that was impossible to fill. He had died under mysterious circumstances, a puzzle that remained unsolved, a riddle that was left unanswered. The whispers of the townfolks, the hushed conversations, the sideways glances all pointed towards something sinister, something that was not of this world. My mind couldn't help but wander back to our last conversation. His voice, filled with an unsettling urgency, still echoed in my ears. He had spoken about strange noises, about whispers that seemed to come from nowhere, about a presence that he felt was constantly watching him. I had dismissed it as a figment of his overactive imagination, but now, I wasn't so sure. As I stood there, lost in my thoughts, the whispering voice was back. This time, however, it sounded familiar, eerily similar. It was as if I had heard it before, a voice from a distant past, a voice that I thought I would never hear again. My heart pounded in my chest as a realization washed over me. Could it be? Was it possible? Could the voice that had been haunting me be the voice of my departed friend? As much as my rational mind refused to believe it, my heart couldn't deny the familiarity. The voice, the tone, the cadence, it was him. I couldn't shake off the feeling that it was him reaching out from beyond. I gathered my courage, turned around, and shouted into the darkness, "Who are you?" The words echoed, bouncing back and forth off the unseen walls of the room. It felt like a challenge, a declaration of defiance against the unseen terror. The air around me instantly turned frigid as if the room itself was reacting to my audacity. My breath materialized in the icy air, creating ghostly apparitions that danced around me before dissipating into the void. The whispering voice that had been my only companion in this darkness grew louder, more desperate. It was no longer a mere whisper but a cacophony of voices, each one echoing the same despair. Their words were indecipherable, a symphony of sorrow and fear that filled the room. I could feel the chill seeping into my bones, numbing my senses. But I stood my ground. I was not going to be swayed by fear. I was not going to be another victim of this unseen terror. I shouted again, "Show yourself!" The voices fell silent. The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat, each thump echoing the seconds of suspense. It felt like I was standing on the precipice of a revelation, the tension so palpable that it felt like a physical weight pressing down on me. And then, the air shifted, like the calm before a storm. A cold wind swept through the room, making the hair on my neck stand on end. The silence was broken by a low growl, a sound so primal that it sent shivers down my spine, and then, out of the shadows, a figure emerged. I could hardly believe my eyes. Standing before me was my friend, or at least his apparition. The words hung in the frigid air, a chilling reminder of the unnatural reality I was confronting. My breath hitched as I gazed upon his spectral figure, a ghastly mirror of the person I once knew. As I stood there rooted to the spot, a torrent of questions flooded my mind. How could this be? Was I dreaming? But the cold sweat trickling down my spine, the icy gust of wind brushing past my face, it all felt too real to be a figment of my imagination. My friend, who I thought was forever lost in the abyss of oblivion, was here, standing before me in an ethereal form. He spoke in a voice, or perhaps it was more of a whisper that echoed around the room, bouncing off the walls like a mournful melody. It was a voice filled with sorrow, regret, and longing. He spoke of the unfinished business that kept him tethered to the mortal world, of the unresolved ties and unfulfilled promises. His words, though faint and spectral, painted a vivid picture of the torment he was enduring. Each sentence was a plea, a cry for help, a desperate attempt to seek closure. His story was a haunting tale of regret, of actions not taken and words not spoken, a tale that resonated with a deep sense of sorrow and despair. It was a revelation that left me in a state of shock, a revelation that blurred the lines between reality and the supernatural. But amidst the shock and disbelief, I found a resolve to help him, to aid him in his quest for closure, to free him from his spectral chains. With a promise to help him, I watched as he slowly faded away into the darkness. The room fell silent again, but this time, it was a silence filled with a solemn promise, a promise to bring peace to a tormented soul. The following day I set out to fulfill my promise, to help my friend find peace. I found myself venturing into a world I had only heard of in stories, a world where the living and the departed intersect. I carried with me my friend's unfinished business, the unresolved matters that had kept his spirit restless. It was a journey of discovery, of understanding, of closure. I had to tread carefully, respecting the balance between the two realms. I addressed his regrets, his unspoken words, his unfulfilled dreams. I made amends where he couldn't, spoke words he hadn't, and fulfilled dreams he was unable to. It was a daunting task, yet I found a strange serenity in it. It was as if I was not just helping my friend, but also discovering a new perspective on life and death. As I walked the same path that night, the street was silent. No whispers, no cold touch. Just the calm of the night. My friend was finally at peace.